Moshe Mizrahi was a director distinguished in complex and unusual portrait of women. I Love You Rosa, inspired by the life of the director's great grandmother, stars Michael Adam in a moving debut leading role. After the film, Mizrahi and Bet Adam got married, and Bet Adam became a screenwriter, director, and teacher in her own right, the first Israeli woman to direct a film. Her debut film, 1979's Moment, deals with a lesbian friendship before such themes entered the mainstream. Produced by Golan and Globus, I Love You Rosa is a display of their commitment to artistic cinema in their native Israel before their expansion into international production and Hollywood. Mizrahi and his cinematographer Adam Greenberg catch the warmth of the Israel sunlight memorably. There is also a winter sequence with snow during the most arduous period of Rosa and Nissim's separation. The mise en scene is assured and the visual composition constantly engaging, whether in wide landscape panorama or revealing close-up. Dow Selzer has composed a subtle and evocative score. Above all, I Love You Rosa is a character-driven film. The approach is controversial and rebellious in many ways. The opening setup is about the 20-year-old widow Rosa's quandary. Her husband has just died, and since they had no children, she is expected to marry a brother-in-law, but the only available one, Nissim, is just 12-year old. Instead of marrying, Rosa starts to take care of Nissim like a mother, causing a scandal in Jerusalem. When Nissim grows up and starts to earn money, he proposes to Rosa, instantly assuming macho stances, and Rosa throws him away. 5 years later, Nissim returned, now a grown-up man who had learned manners at the cultured house of Don Isaac Pei in Thessaloniki. A true love story can start. Every love story is unique and different, a journey into the known in a constantly changing hall of mirrors. This complexity is captured by Moshe Mizrahi and his cast with psychological sensitivity, tenderness, and a sense of tragedy and humor. Rosa belonged to a generation of pioneering women defying reactionary gender roles. Nissim needs to fight both external and internal prejudices. His love is a matter of life and death. Without her, he loses his appetite and want to live. He cannot live without her. The film is both a drama of Rosa's ordeal and Nissim's buildings Roman in a transitional period from ancient ceremonies toward modernity. The film has special religious value in recording ancient custom of the Halitza ceremony in which widow must formally reject the expected suitor. Rosa's quandary stemmed from an obedience of decrees of the Deuteronomy in the synagogue. We witness her having to remain hidden in the balcony. On the other hand, the life affirming rabbi states that God is everywhere and loves people. A fundamentally positive attitude to romance prevailed. Nissim quote the Song of Solomon, "Love is as strong as death." The film also records all custom of wool carding with a string instrument similar to ones known in ancient India. The instrument is the symbol of Rosa's late husband Raphael. So Ellie, who would like to propose to Rosa, is a wool carder. He also teaches the craft to Nissim, who soon become dexterous in the job. Ellie constantly, probably due to an occupational disease. The viewer may suspect that pneumoconiosis has brought Raphael to a premature grave. There is an authentic feeling of a traditional way of life next to the nature and countryside, with sheep farming as a major occupation. 12-year-old Nissim and his grandmother Rosa visit the grave of her husband Nissim, who died 40 years ago. Rosa promises to come to him soon. A little later, she lies dying. She says that her grandson reminds her a lot of her husband, after whom he was named. The Sephardic Rosa was just 20 years old when her husband Raphael died, without having fathered any offspring. According to the law, one of her husband's brother must marry her in order to carry on the family name. Raphael's brother David is already married and has 4 children. Raphael's younger brother Nissim is just 12-year-old old and is therefore out of the question as a husband. Nissim, however, wants to marry Rosa and says that he loves her. For this, he receives a slap in the face from his mother. Rosa earns her own living, atypical for her time, by working in the bathhouse during the day and as a seamstress at night. Her friend Jamila tried to set her up with the craftsman Ali, but Rosa refuses because she knows that she is legally promised to Nissim as long as he is willing to marry. One night, he runs away to her because he despises his own mother. When she tries to bring Nissim home the next day, making a lot of noise, the rabbi has to intervene. Because Nissim wants to live with Rosa, she doesn't mind raising him. And David is also relieved to have one less child in the house. Nissim is allowed to stay with Rosa. Rosa encourages him to study and reject his confession of love because he is still a child. At the same time, she doesn't give in to Alice's wooing but gets him to take Nassim on as an apprentice at the age of 13. Nassim studies hard because he knows that this is the only way he can earn money and ultimately take Rosa as his wife. However, as the months pass, his growing up becomes difficult. He begins to rebel and come home late from playing. When Rosa reprimands him, he replies that she is not his mother. Rosa pretends to throw him out of the house and he collapses. The love of Nissim for his widowed sister-in-law Rosa in the old city of Jerusalem at the turn of the century. Under religious law, Nissim has the duty and obligation to marry his childless sister-in-law on the death of his brother. He is very fond of her and grows to love her. However, he is only 12 and newly single Rosa is not interested in either child rearing or remarriage. She starts to work in a hammam as a laundry woman and a tailor at night. Meanwhile, Nissim is fired from home and they live together for 2 years. He learns But when he learns cotton ginning and makes money in this way, he starts to act like an adult and insult her, so she shoos him away. 5 years later, he comes back with marriage at peace, showing life in Jerusalem in the 19th century. This was the last film that Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus produced in Israel before moving to Hollywood to found Canon Films. On the strength of this movie, they got backing for their new company. Michael Bet Adam is turning as Rosa, a young widow caught in the web of ancient religious edict. Based on the life of director Mizrahi's mother in late 19th century Jerusalem. The flashback frame plot involves a young, childless Sephardic Mizrahi widow under pressure to comply with ancient law and eventually marry her late husband's little brother Nissim, a grief-stricken 12-year-old at odds with his other brother and sister-in-law in whose home he lived. Much against her inclination for independence, the widowed Rosa takes him in with the rabbi's permission, earning a living for them both and seeing to his education and beginning of a gainful occupation for him. As he grows into an adolescent with changing affection toward her, and other suitors remain open to her, conflict flares, and Nissim disappears. 5 years later, when he returned as a young man, it is from Europe, with an education and livelihood of his own, confronting Rosa's determination to possess her own freedom, and the long postponed legal decision between them. Jerusalem had a brief but heavy snowfall during the shoot. The filmmakers incorporated it beautifully into the script rather than work around it. This Israeli movie is an oddity because the Golden Globus production team with obnoxious action film from the 1980s. Clearly, the two filmmakers are not usually mistaken for great artists, though to assume that all their output was of such less than subtle fare is also a mistake. Clearly, with I Love You Rosa is a beautiful and very subtle film. The story is set in 19th century Palestine and involves the ancient rule from Deuteronomy that if a husband dies, his brother is obliged to take the widow as his bride and care for her. The problem with this is twofold in the film. First, by modern times, the practice had all but disappeared and was no longer seen as an imperative. Second, in the case of this story, the surviving brother is only about 12 years old, a bit young for marriage to the adult Rosa. Now this story could have been handled in an exploitational manner, with the curious and amorous young man struggling with his love impulses toward Rosa. However, his infatuation is handled very well, with a slow and deliberate pace that is quite beautiful and believable. Nissim does not, as a mere child, conquer Rosa, and it does not become a titillating love film. It is far, far deeper and more lyrical. However, there is the beginning of love and desire on Rosa's part, but it is handled tastefully and in a decent manner, as both Rosa and Nissim are good people. After all, no normal person would want to see a film that glamorizes love between a 12 and 22-year-old. However, there is desire and love between them. How can this be handled in a non-exploitational manner and still be a film you could probably watch with family? Because the film has a lovely script, good acting, and especially good direction. The slowness of the film can be excused, though those who prefer the canon style films will probably hate this movie. Not surprisingly, it was nominated for the Best Foreign Film Oscar. It is a fine film and very rewarding if you are patient and appreciate its pacing and style. Israeli cinema gained notoriety in the 1970s in Europe and the United States when Moshe Mizrahi's Hebrew language I Love You Rosa represented his country both at the Cannes Film Festival and in the Oscar competition in the foreign language film category. It is a romantic drama set in Jerusalem in the 1880s when Nissim falls in love with Rosa, Nissim's widowed sister-in-law. The situation has an important religious and cultural background. Perhaps we could best say the Old Testament, because according to the oldest religious laws recorded in the Torah, Nissim actually has the duty and obligation to marry the brother's spouse after his death. This time there is no major problem in this relationship in the starting situation, as Nissim like Rosa and actually falls in love with her. The big but is that Nissim is only a 12-year-old boy. Rosa is not enthusiastic about the relationship with the child and not necessarily even about the new marriage. So she wants to banish the boy from her path. But when Nissim grows up, he returns to the issue, which of course even then, as one might expect, is still not an uncontroversial or unproblematic situation. Later, when he does the housework, he is mocked as a girl by the women on the street. At the same time, he is deeply horrified when a friend takes him to a brothel where a woman offers herself to him. Shortly afterward, when Nissim receives his first assignment at work and is paid, he becomes cocky, throws the money at Rosa, claims to be an adult and instructs Rosa to bring him food. She reacts coldly. He has changed to such an extent that she no longer wants him at her side. Nissim leaves her house in shock. 5 years later, Nissim is of age and has a girlfriend. A woman read his future from his cup and explained that although he has a woman by his side, his heart belonged to someone else. Nissim returned to Rosa and pretend to be visiting her on behalf of her friend. However, she recognizes him and falls into his arm, as she has never forgotten him. The next morning, she tells him that she still can't marry him. He is the man prescribed to her by the law. However, she wants to decide for herself. With a heavy heart, he agreed to give up his marriage right. However, Rosa does not complete the formal renunciation ceremony halitza in front of the rabbi and instead leaves the room early. She withdraws and Nissim collapses lovesick. It wasn't until many months later that he went to see her, emaciated and in pain. Now she tells him about a young woman who became a widow. She tells him their story together, which ends with this woman asking him to become her husband. They both happily fall into each other's arms. In the present, Rosa sees her end coming. She sits up on her bed one last time and calls Nissim's name before she dies. The basic conflict in I Love You Rosa is based on the Levirate, which says if two brothers live together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased should not become the wife of a strange man outside the family. Her brother-in-law should take care of her, marry her, and consummate the brother-in-law marriage with her. But if the man does not want to marry his sister in law, and his sister in law goes up to the elder at the gate and says, my brother in law does not want to secure the existence of his brother's name in Israel and has therefore refused to enter into brother in law marriage with me. If the elders of his city then summon him and confront him, but he stick to his stance and declare, I don't want to marry her, then his sister-in-law should come up to him in front of the elders, take the shoe of his foot, put him in the footspit in the face and exclaim, this is how one treats someone who does not build his brother's house. This is how one treats someone who does not build his brother's house.